Good evening, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with a tropical weather outlook, hurricane outlook and discussion recorded around 5 p.m. on June 19th, 2023. We are covering Tropical Storm Bret that is now formed in the Atlantic Main Development Region that is posing a potential hurricane threat to portions of the Lesser Antilles. So let's go ahead and jump straight into everything. Taking a look here at Tropical Storm Bret this evening, we notice how the system has become a lot better defined even in the infrared satellite loop here. We notice that the convective structure today is relatively one that is characterized by shallower convection near to the center of circulation. And that's been largely in part because of dry air entrainments that have wrapped around the circulation from time to time. And the system is still very young. It's not very well developed. So this dry air is going to pose a little bit of a greater concern for this system in terms of impacting it. But very clearly you can see the associated mid-level and low-level spin associated with the system. And it's only going to continue to get better organized from here, especially as we head into the diurnal maximum period this evening. So taking a look here at the track forecast for Tropical Storm Bret. Currently, maximum sustained winds 40 miles per hour, pressure of 1,008, moving west at 21 miles per hour. So this is the current track forecast. We notice our system is expected to become a hurricane within the course of about the next 2 days. The National Hurricane Center calling for a peak maximum sustained wind of 80 miles per hour with gusts closer to 90 to 95 miles per hour at times. And then this is expected to cross into the Lesser Antilles, generally north of Barbados, sometime here early Friday morning into Friday afternoon, before beginning to weaken as it approaches Puerto Rico here to the south by Saturday in the afternoon. So right now, this is taking a course directly south of Puerto Rico, closer and closer towards the Dominican Republic and Hispaniola. However, I want to emphasize that this track forecast is very uncertain at this moment, given the fact that there's a lot of differences in the models. And we're going to go ahead and jump into the differences here, and we're going to go ahead and break down all the forecast guidance right now. So taking a look here at the upper level wind environment for this storm. We've been talking about this over the last couple of days. The storm has a relatively pristine environment to work within at the current moment. There's not too much wrong with it, other than some dry air and restricted outflow on the southern side, but that will get worked out as we progress throughout the next couple of days. The bigger concern is going to be what happens as this nears the Lesser Antilles. Throughout the next about 2 to 4 days, the system is going to have a lot of outflow in the upper levels, helping to ventilate the storm and keep its trajectory towards strengthening. The HWAR forecast here from this morning's run had this at a hurricane intensity 987 within about 48 hours, which is currently what the Hurricane Center is calling for sometime early Wednesday. This continues to move forward on the model and actually deepens quite substantially, and this is where things begin to diverge. The HWAR forecast brings this to fairly strong hurricane intensity. In fact, it deepens it below 960 millibars, which is very intense. That would be Cat 2, Cat 3 hurricane, where if we look at the GFS forecast, for example, it keeps it relatively weak. It's about 993 at its lowest, and we notice what's happening here is increasing shear out of the westerly and northwesterly trajectory here from this storm. So as the storm is going in one way, the shear in the upper levels of the atmosphere is blowing the other way. And if you can just imagine a little storm, we'll kind of draw it like that. These storms need to be straight up and straight down. They cannot have any tilt, something like that, where it's, up and then down, whether it be substantial tilting. So excuse my bad illustrations, but when you get that tilting of the vortex, it spreads out the latent heat over a fairly large area and actually increases dry air transport into the storm. So that's one way that this system would struggle on approach to the islands, and that's the current thinking from the majority of the guidance, although the HWARF here and some of the regional hurricane models suggest that this becomes a quite powerful storm on approach to the islands, which I'm not taking that and buying that solution at this point. It just doesn't seem all that reasonable. But a more reasonable depiction would be the GFS showing a weaker tropical storm or potentially low-end hurricane making its way into the Caribbean and affecting the island chain. So who's going to be impacted? Let's go ahead and find out right now. Most of the overall forecast guidance today has become in much better agreement with a storm taking a track into the Caribbean, generally staying to around Barbados and north. This is a multi-model ensemble forecast, so a big super blend of all of the models here. And generally, it's showing fairly high confidence in a storm making its way somewhere within the Caribbean over the next couple of days. There's fairly decent confidence in that happening now. Some of the models like the HWRF and HMON continue to be the furthest on the right, along with the GFS. Some of the other models like the European, the ECMWF, and the CMC, the Canadian forecast, are much further south, just along and north of Barbados, roughly. But I think Trinidad, Tobago, and Guyana will be completely fine. I do not think there's going to be a threat for this storm to reach that area. So when we talk about specific threats right now, there's a limited tropical cyclone impact risk from Barbados northward and up until the U.S. British Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. South of that, really Trinidad, Tobago, Guyana, you're in the clear right now. There's no threat that I'm seeing at this time. And for the Hispaniola Dominican Republic area, I'm going with no threat for right now, although that's likely going to change over time. I just don't see enough, and there's not enough confidence yet to include portions of the Dominican Republic and Hispaniola and Haiti in a limited threat. So for right now, I'm calling for no threat. That is subject to change, though. So again, the Northern Island Chain, USVI, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic right now, potentially the Dominican Republic, but more so we're looking from about Barbados northward through the northern part of that island chain there. So that's kind of your breakdown. We're looking at the potential for some heavy rainfall, winds that could be gusting, close to 80 miles per hour at times. But generally speaking, it's just a little too early to increase or add anybody else into the risk areas. And just to kind of track our next tropical wave, we're watching Invest Area 93L today, now with a 50% chance of becoming a tropical cyclone over the next week or so, as this system generally heads off towards the west and closely follows Tropical Storm Bret. I do not think that this is going to be a significant threat to the Lesser Antilles at this time. In fact, the majority of the reliable guidance today continues to take it on a track that is well to the north of the island chain and away from that area. So I think that the island chain again today, we notice where Bret is. It's still several 100,000 miles away, or not several 100,000, but several thousand miles away from the islands at this point, and there is no imminent threat. But again, for the island chain, we'll need to be watching Tropical Storm Bret very carefully, as this could become our next hurricane, or become our first hurricane rather. And then we'll be watching Invest 93L that could become Tropical Storm Sydney over the next couple of days. All right. So that being said, I do hope you have a great rest of your evening. Of course, I am Michael O'Malley. God bless. Take care. And I'll talk to you guys again some more tomorrow.